Check, check. Okay. Shalom, y'all. Most high in Christ bless. Happy Sabbath. Um, the topic is the mind diet. The mind diet. I'm not gonna be that long today. You know, the scriptures. When you look at life, it's very interesting how you can be in this constant state of free fall, um, mentally, depending on your environment. Right? It can be a situation where you can be up one day and then down the next. And there was a book. I mentioned this to a brother I was talking to earlier this week. I'm trying to become more of a reader outside the Bible, like just other books and stuff, right? So there was a book that I saw a while ago. I bought it and I read it. It's very short, but the book is called "As a Man Thinketh." Right? It was a guy that took the concept from Proverbs 23. It is interesting as you go through it. Again, it's not that long, but it's interesting as you go through it. Um, you kind of look at it better puts in perspective certain things. The concepts are all in the scriptures, but it better puts in the perspective on how you kind of take a step by step approach to how your way of consumption or the way that you see things can alter so quickly depending on what scenario, what situation you're in, or whatever you're consuming, right? It's a very interesting but dangerous thing if it's not controlled, right? And Christ spoke often. Mainly, the key point about what he was speaking about was these things: the concerning of the heart and the importance of understanding where all things kind of derive from. Right? It's um, the starter kit to everything is the mind, and this is why it's very difficult to. It's a very large task that a person has to get over in order to be accepted into the kingdom, because outward things are very easy to do. Outward things are very easy to, I guess you can say, to be um, perceived wrong based on whoever's viewing you and saying. And we talked about this in previous classes about doing something and it looks like it's right, and it makes the person, because he's doing a right thing, it makes the person look like he's right. But when the Lord is the only one that can read the heart, it's a very different concept. And the people that look like the outward appearance maybe not are accepted based on the Most High viewing through their fleshly or the carnal state, right? And this is why you have a Matthew 7, where it's all Christ says, Lord, Lord, um, I had done all these things, I taught, I spoke this and all that. Now, can be a very fine line between Israelites understanding the concept of how they move and having to improve, or looking at themselves, which is a very rare thing, as a true um, honest assessment of who they are when they look in the mirror, right? Versus Matthew 7 being juxtaposed against the everyday Sunday Christian, right? But the Israelites are the ones that need to hear this, obviously, because they are the ones that's held to a higher regard. You, me, everyone alike, right? So, like I said, we're not going to be that long, but let's start off in Luke 10. Um, Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10, verse 1. It says, after these things, the Lord appointed other 70 also, and sent them two and two before his face into every city and place whither he himself would come, right? So they're the forerunners, are the ones that are sent out, are being the forerunners of what's to be relayed before the Lord comes. This is very indicative of the exact same situation that we're in, right? As we look at ourselves, we're reading the scriptures from the past. We look at ourselves in the modern times, and it's kind of the same concept, right? It's best for a brother or a sister to approach you and say something to you before the father gets back. It's the same concept, and when I talk about this all the time, and just to reiterate for people's minds to maybe help process or whoever may see it, is why I always say when we're talking about the Bible, we're talking about the Most High. Take him off the magic pedestal and put it into the perspective of everyday life, right? The same way most of us, I would assume most of us, you've had the message relayed to you from your mom. You did something, you're acting up, something happened in school. Just wait till your father gets home, right? These things are analogous. They're the same thing when you think about these concepts. That's why we were talking about this magician, no sky daddy, and this is very hard to believe. The concepts still are mapped on to our everyday lives. So don't think about this uncoupled situation that one has nothing to do with the other. These roll hand in hand, right? So this is the same concept. The Lord's picking disciples to go, set the tone, and I'm coming as well, right? This is the same concept, right? Now, the ones that the Lord is sending out, think about the mind frame that they must be in. Even though the people that's handpicked to be sent out, it's the same with the disciples, right? The ones that he's sending out, a person can get to this position and think, I've made it, right? I'm chosen to do the work. But we know that the journey doesn't necessarily end there, right? Verse 2, therefore said he unto them, the harvest truly is great, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth laborers into his harvest. Go your ways, behold, I send you forth as lambs among wolves. Now keep that in mind, right? I'm sending you out as the lamb among the wolves. There's a distinction between the two, but they can be blurred oftentimes. Maybe sometimes without a person seeing it, right? The hope is that the wolves become the lambs, right? Not the other way around, right? Verse 4, carry neither purse, nor scrip, nor shoes, and salute no man by the way. Meaning, another key point, don't get off track. You have to stay focused, and your mindset has to be mainstreamed in this mission. It's easy to be offset. It's easy to get off the path. This is why the Lord keeps telling them these things. Don't even don't even think about the concept of, not saying necessarily a brother, like in Sirach 41. Sirach 41 talks about if a brother salutes you, don't ignore him, right? That's something that's dishonorable. Don't do something like that. It's not what Christ's talking about. But this is playing into a bigger metaphor, and we'll get there in a second. But these things these key things he's telling you are attributable to many different aspects of life. And it's important that we kind of don't just hone in on this one specific thing, but make this broad amongst everything that we look at or every piece of our life every day, because it can be beneficial, right? So don't salute thee by the way, meaning don't let nobody take you off track. Keep going. Verse 5, and in whatsoever house ye enter, first say, peace be to this house. And if the Son of Peace be there, your peace shall rest upon it. If not, it shall turn to you again. Now, verse 7, and in the same house remain, eating and drinking such things as they give. For the laborer is worthy of his hire. Go not from house to house, and and into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you. Eat such things as are set before you, and heal the sick that are therein, and say unto them, the kingdom of heaven is come nigh unto you. Right? Not that you're there yet, but the kingdom of heaven is being presented to you in a particular way that you need to have wisdom to recognize it. So the mission is clear. Don't get off track. You make sure that you are a lamb and understanding the distinction between you and the wolves and how to kind of maneuver when you go into certain situations. Eat the things that are presented to you, but keep in mind when you go into these places to let them know the kingdom of heaven is nigh unto you. Don't get off track. This is the point, right? So the mindset I was talking about when the Lord sends these 70 out, and this kind of goes for, again, this plays into all of us because we're in the position, especially the brothers that are in a position as you go out to do this work, you're called in a specific position outside of the sisters. The sisters still doing a representation of what the Lord's supposed to be acceptable, right? But the men are the ones tasked to go do these things. So let's go to Matthew 9. Yeah, Matthew 9. Uh, Matthew 9 and verse 9. Matthew 9 and 9. And as Jesus passed forth from thence, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the receipt of custom, and he saith unto him, Follow me. And he arose and followed him. Right? Uh, verse 10. And it came to pass, as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, Why eateth your master with publicans and sinners? Now, this, excuse me, this concept, this concept is kind of very powerful when a person is understanding the weight of this is what Christ is saying. Excuse me, what the Pharisees approached Christ with. Verse 11 says, When the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, Why eateth your master? Why does he go and eat with the publicans and the sinners? And I mention this because of the concept of the oftentimes final position that our minds take when we go out and we're doing the work. You can get consumed with the work and you kind of forget that you are a person that's not perfected yet. The Lord didn't call people that were perfect, right? He called people that were imperfect to be perfect, knowing that it's an unending journey. This thing has to be continued and recycled over. Like Paul says, you got to die daily. This thing never ends until it literally does. The sun cracks the sky. At that point, you're not necessarily quitting what you're doing. The work's done and you will be accepted or rejected, right? Verse 12 says, But when Jesus heard that, he said unto them, They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. Those are the ones that need that physician, right? And this is what I mean when we are in the field or in the harvest going to try to bring brothers and sisters into the truth. The mindset has to be, he called me as a sick person, right? And you can arrive at the point because you've been doing the work that you are not sick anymore. And that's an unwise position to take, right? If you're smart, you would be the person to realize that you never check out of the hospital. Like you're always going to be a patient there. You might be like on a different floor, right? Let's put it this way: you might be taken from ICU and put on a different floor, but you're always going to be a patient there. You're never going to be done because the Lord has to be with those that are sick. There's levels to this, right? Not a person that is a person that's a serial killer. We're not talking about that, but I'm talking about a person needs to understand that the imperfections or the impurities are always going to continue to be drawn out. It has to be drawn out because it's necessary for a person to understand that Christ is necessary in your life, right? It has to be there, and that thought process has to be constant, or else you'll arrive at a point and you'll think, since I'm doing the work or since I'm out in the field, I'm good enough, right? I'm good, and I can forget the position of the people I'm talking to you'll forget that you were once in their shoes, or you're still relatable to them, because even on the back of your mind or your flesh is a representation of a person that is capable of doing the same things that the people that you're talking to, right? It doesn't go away. So a person has to have his mindset, and he has to be aware of his surroundings and who he's dealing with in order to stay in this, what you think to be a strong position. Anybody can be called, anybody can lose their position. A person has to have the mindset that I'm going to consistently work to not to, but there's certain parameters and the things that you have to do in order to maintain that healthy mindset of being worthy of the position that you've been called in, right? Let's go to Sirach 31. This is what I mean by a broader metaphor of being applicable to every part of your life, right? As Christ tells the 70 as they go out to go set the tone before he comes, don't talk to anybody by the way. Don't get distracted. Understand that you're a lamb and not a wolf, right? People think that those lines can't get blurred. They can. And this is a very strange concept, but this is a battle, right? The Lord tells us to stay away from wickedness. But in order to save people, you have to go into the wickedness, right? So it's a very strange concept that a person has to hold that ground and be strong enough to understand who I'm dealing with and not be consumed or enticed by the things that you see from other people, because that happens all the time. Scriptures tell you not envy a sinner, because there's something about your flesh and the carnal nature of you, and this place and this construct is so perfect to suck you back in, right? Sirach 31 verse 16. Remember when the 70 go out, Christ tells them, whatever a person gives you sets before you, eat, because a laborer is worth a hire, right? Which is true, right? But there's still parameters to these things. In every aspect of an Israelite's life, this is why we differ from so many other people or other nations on the planet, is because every aspect of our life is supposed to be strategically mapped out, from eating to how we talk, to who you marry, to how you raise your children. Every part of an Israelite's life is supposed to be mapped out correctly in order to stay on the beaten path. Eating is just one concept, right? How to eat, not just a dietary law. Verse 16, it says, eat as it becometh a man those things which are set before thee, and devour it not, lest thou be hated, right? So there's a concept to how you're supposed to consume food, even something like that. Something that people would consider to be small. Like they'll say things like, God don't care about mixing fabric, even though he says he does. So these commandments is no really small. Like even the scriptures talk about the least commandment. They're still important, right? There might be some that's, oh my gosh, it's greater than the other ones, but these still things, an amalgamation of all these different things, make you a righteous individual. It's not just one subset. It's not, oh, just the 10 commandments, right? Eat as it becometh a man those things which are set before thee, and devour not, unless thou be hated, right? Leave off first for manners' sake, and be not unsatiable, lest thou offend. When thou sittest among many, reach not thine hand out first of all. A very little is sufficient for a man well nurtured, and he fetcheth not his wind short upon his bed. So again, this concept or understanding of how you, even the 70 that sent out supposed to conduct themselves when they come into somebody else's house, you're still on point. It's not because something changed or the conversation got friendlier or the house is more friendly than the previous one you went to, even though they might both be, ready to receive the word, or the food changes. There's still etiquette in understanding how you're supposed to conduct yourself. This is the physical aspect, the carnal aspect, right? Because like it talks about being short upon wind upon his bed. This goes into the same thing as, which we joke about in the past or whatever, but calories in, calories out, right? These foods can literally manipulate and change your body. That's just not the only concept that a person needs to understand when they're dealing with everyday life. Food's just one concept, right? So there's an etiquette to how you're supposed to operate. A person's not supposed to be unsatiable not just on food, but on anything. Verse 20, sound sleep cometh of moderate eating. He riseth early, and his wits are with him. But the pain of watching, and choler, and pangs of the belly are with an unsatiable man. Meaning he's shifted from being normal to now having massive problems because a person may be gluttonous or a person can't stop consuming physically in this aspect. But this again speaks to a broader position. Verse 21, and if thou hast been forced to eat, arise, go forth, vomit, and thou shalt have rest. So this overconsumption food wise is obviously not a good thing, right? The scriptures warn about certain things or repercussions or side effects that come with a person that can't um doesn't have the ability, well, they have the ability but they don't want to stop, right? This can alter moods the same way we talk about when a person consumes liquor, right? I didn't notice until I mean, it's been some years now, but I didn't know that liquor was always referred to as spirits. I learned this in the truth, not too long in the truth, but it was still fascinating concept to me because as soon as I've always wondered like what it would look like under a microscope if you can watch the alcohol fed into a person's system and like have a dual screen of watching what the alcohol does to the blood, the content of the blood, and watch how a person's behavior starts to shift as you see them both moving at the same time. How a person's eyesight can get blurry, or his confidence can raise, or he can get more simple. It's interesting because that's what it's talking about. It's like a spirit possession. You're not that same person. Food can do the same thing, right? Let's go to Amos 6. A person can be consumed with this leisure lifestyle and this mentality, and a person can be off their mission really quick because a person needs to understand again that when Christ tells them to don't turn off by the way, this is supposed to be like a horse with blinders on. Like, I'm not sending you out to forget who you are. I'm not sending you out to look like a wolf instead of a lamb. I'm sending you out on a mission. There's many things that you're going to find out there that are going to want to move you over back to the side that you were before you understood the truth. There's many things that's going to try to usurp you or usurp Christ's authority or mess your position up of you chasing after trying to get a spot in the kingdom, right? Many things. And the more time you spend out there, the more susceptible you can be. But a person needs to understand that this is the battle. It's not really a way around it. You have to go through it. There's no other concept, right? The northern kingdom, as southern kingdom did as well, but Amos 6, the northern kingdom did this, right? You start to become leisurely. You start to become like, it's not that important. You start to push less and less, right? By the things that you see, and it starts to change your mindset. You have to be a person that understands consumption on all aspects can alter how you see things and persuade you to a side that you don't want to be on at the end. Amos 6 in verse 1. And you notice this concept always seems to come about when we look after the nations because we're separate, right? And our people consistently want to be and do the things that the nations do all the time. You want to eat unclean food. You want to marry their women. Women want to marry their men. You see all kinds of different things. They want to act rebellious. They don't want to rest on the Sabbath. It seems to be a consistent thing, right? And that always leads us in trouble. Amos 6 in verse 1, Northern Kingdom was no different. Woe to them that are woe to them that are at ease in Zion and trust in the mountain of Samaria, which are named chief of the nations, to whom the house of Israel came. Because you had the splitting of the kingdom, and the northern kingdom, went off the rails fast to be just like everybody else. They set up and mimic like Jeroboam copied what Rehoboam had at the time in the kingdom on the southern side. The normal side was supposed to be. The kingdom was united. But as it split, Jeroboam copies and puts the things over here to make idol worship just an everyday practice like breathing. Verse 2, Pass ye unto Canaan, and see, and from thence go ye to Hamath the great. Then go down to Gath of the Philistines. Be they better than these kingdoms? Or their border greater than your border, right? It starts to become a comparison of who's more righteous and who's more wicked, right? Verse 3. Yet, ye that put far away the evil day, and cause the seat of violence to come near, right? As this leisurely thing starts to happen, as you forget the mission and the things that you're on, and the blending of the two worlds start to come together, you start to lean back over into what was familiar, right? Because sin is very seductive. Pick your, you can have your pick of whatever it may be, something that somebody might be struggling with, from money to a person that really has a level of hatred for another person, right? To, I mentioned alcohol, to lust, whatever it may be, covetousness, whatever it may be, it can be very seductive to the person that's susceptible to it, or a person that had a problem with it in the past. A person has to be mindful of the people that they're around and to understand that this is temporary. Everything that you're seeing is temporary. This isn't a, you're not supposed to be here. Everything that you're seeing and witnessing every day is messed up and is out of order. You can't fall in love with the dream or the concept of you thinking that this is normal or real, because it's all going to go away. Verse 4, that lie upon beds of ivory and stretch themselves upon their couches, and eat the lambs out of the flock, and calves out of the midst of the stall, that chant to the sound of the viol, and invent to themselves instruments of music, like David, that drink wine in bowls, and anoint themselves with the chief ointments. But they are not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. They're not no longer concerned about what's actually really happening, right? They're consumed with the things that they see, and they're now caught up and forgot all about the wickedness that's going on. They forgot all about captivity. They forgot all about the original place or the mission that they were supposed to be on, because it's consumption of the things that you see and you're being persuaded to the other side. That physical thing is the exact same thing with the mindset as well, right? You have the reason why the Lord says these things, and I mentioned earlier about the idea of the heart posture of an individual is so important, because a person can maneuver a certain way, but if the heart's not changed over, it seems like a matter of time before you go back to what, like, the physical can be doing something and then the heart feels something else. The physical eventually will return back to the heart, right? Or the mind. That's how this setup goes. They're not going to be too far apart for too long. They're going to come back together. The most important thing is the heart needs to be changed, and then the physical will follow, right? But if the heart's not changed, you can have a physical changing, or it looks like it, but eventually it's going to go back to the same thing. Let's go to Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6 in verse 19. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal, right? Because this is, again, it's temporary. Nobody wants something that's valuable to go away. You get confused and think that the things that you have here, especially because you've been around it for whatever you consider to be so long, 20 years in comparison to eternity is not the same thing, but it's what you know, so you're familiar with it, right? You base your assumption off of that. Don't lay these treasures up upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also, right? The mindset of, I'm trying to attain that. Like the Hebrews talks about, remember Hebrews 11 talks about when Abraham was looking for a city afar off, right? And this is to come. And the funny thing is people consistently are, they can stay motivated when they have something to be motivated for, like something that's in the distance. They'll continue to turn their wheels to get something, right? It's just most of the time it's misplaced. It's not often the things that you haven't experienced, but or you haven't seen, but you got to keep pushing forward until it becomes a real thing, right? Until it's in front of your face, right? This is where faith comes from. Um, where your treasure is your heart will be also, right? Verse 21, excuse me, verse 22. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thine whole body shall be full of light. And this is what I'm talking about, the ups and downs of how a person perceives something, right? The mind, you'll see the class picture of the individual with the brother with the phone, right? This is the reason why I say Esau is like a truly is the final boss. When you, his things that he's developed and the things that he has at his disposal to get people distracted. I mean, politics in itself is just like this massive. I mean, people believe it. Maybe it's because where I'm looking at the position I'm in now, like 2020 hindsight, but politics is such a game, and people are so locked into it. Like they'll die believing you truly have the ability to vote and change America. The concept is unbelievable. But Esau has so many strongholds on people, from distractions of sports, your phone, your computer, your scrolling. Doom scrolling is one of the things. Look that up if you never heard doom scrolling before. Literally addictive. From the poison food to keep your mind distracted. From, um, I mean, it's like 1,000 different concepts of these things. If you consistently are consuming these things, even from the food, remember the body changes you. Whatever you consume with the eye, everything comes in through that, right? You perceive it, you map it on, and then you start to kind of alter how you move. And if a person is not mindful of that diet, right, what you take in through the eye, not just physically, right, what you take in through the eye, if a person is not mindful of those things that he's viewing and the things that he's around, then eventually that same thing will happen. The same ramifications that happen to an overconsumption of you eating something from the body is the same side effects you'll have mentally, right? And that's a person that has to be guarded heavily, is what Christ was saying, that your heart, everything comes from this in Mark 7. Evil communications, everything. So a person has to understand that the things that you're taking in can alter you severely. And a person might arrive at the point where they're just so far gone, you don't even notice it, right? You just having, you were sent out on a mission with the Lord is telling you to do something, and then you see the things, you see the food, just sitting down, you're like, oh, I'm having a good time, and you're forgetting to let them know, listen, the kingdom of heaven is near you. You forgetting all about that. It's about the food, it's about the things that you see, it's about going back to the world and seeing things that people are doing. You want to be a part of it again. And it's ultimately a death sentence, essentially, because it doesn't necessarily give you anything. It's just a temporary high, which is not really a high that lasts that long, right? Even in the midst of being in the world, it's just a couple things that you have here and there that spikes, you know what I mean, and it drops back down. It spikes and it drops back down. Most of the time, you don't necessarily have the adequate resources to maintain that high. And usually that comes in the form of drugs or something else, or eventually physically lead you to a death as well. So everything that comes in through the eye, it's like the light of it. If you have a singleness of that eye, then it's a momentous thing. A person can continue to build and grow. You only focus on the scripts. You only focus on commandments. You filter everything through that. You're good to go. But verse 23, if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore that light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness, right? Just like on the flip side, you can imagine the things that's coming out now from media, from people, podcasts, and investigative journalism. All these things that's happening on the higher parts is some of the greatest darkness you could ever imagine, right? Sin is just not a sin. What it can lead to is just like an infinite wickedness that the human mind can't even really consume or um, comprehend the level of wickedness that people do in order to get whatever it may be. And there's brings any other concepts, right? A person's eye might be on money. He want that. I want the things that come with that. And then you see the people that have the money in circulation, they're the ones that control it. They might open the door for you. But the higher you go up, the more they require. Right? The same thing concept. It's just a duality. The same concept with the Most High. The greater things the Most High give you, the greater He expects from you. This on the dark side of it, they do the same thing. You want to rise through the ranks, you want to be a $400 million rapper, you're going to have to do some things to get to this level. It's the same thing. It's just the opposite side of the spectrum. One's righteous, one is hella wicked, right? So a person has to keep that in mind as well. Those are the things that you consume, and a person has to maintain that thought process because, again, you're going to spend a lot of time in this wickedness. You're going to spend a lot of time around these people because you're talking to them, trying to pull them out of darkness. But you got to remember that you went in as a lamb, you must come out as that way. You can't go in and convert over to being a wolf. You're not supposed to be that. Sirach 37. And this ultimately can get to a point where once your heart's gone, or it can be the Most High's will. He has mercy and patience on it. You can autocorrect it, right? You see Christ, when Christ was telling Peter that Satan wanted you, like he wanted to sift you as wheat. You have to be mindful. Christ can fight for you. The Lord can fight for you. The Most High can take you out of all kinds of wickedness. You just got to be a person that's wise enough, like we was talking about in Matthew 9, to understand I'm still a patient in the hospital. I can't talk like I'm this finished product. I'm way off from this, and I might not even get there. Well, you're not going to get there until the Lord comes back. But understanding that is half the battle, right? Always checking yourself, always going over different things and being like, man, I'm not really where I need to be. I might have been fooling myself for a while. You might have had started off with a lot of jet fuel, and then you've used so much of it and you feel like you're down a little bit, and then your fire dies and your attentiveness fails. But being mindful of it, auto correcting, asking the Lord in sincerity to kind of forgive you, help you through these different things. The Most High is not some evil dictator. That's not how the Most High works. Always talking about mercy. Always look, the greatest form of it is sending His Son. But a person has to want to make the change as well, or to auto correct himself to get back to where he was, right? That's why it talks about sin is one thing, but being a mischievous person is literally choosing the path of wickedness and staying on it. That's the difference between a person falling and a person falling into mischief, right? And that consumption of what you see in your eyes or your mind supposed to be a thing that works for you, right? It's supposed to be something beneficial. It's where everything's stored at. The wisdom, the understanding, all these different things supposed to be beneficial for you. Sirach 37 verse 13. And I used to understand this in the reverse. It was just to be used to think this was a bad thing. This is not a bad thing, actually. This is a good thing. Verse 13. Let the counsel of thine heart stand, for there is no man more faithful unto thee than it, right? This is supposed to be like a person they be able to trust themselves. You can't trust yourself, you got problems, right? I'm not saying you're always perfect all the time. You have that battle going on that Paul mentions in Romans 7. You have this war going on inside you. I'm not saying that your mind, everything's going to be sunny and great all the time. But a person should be able to be in a healthy position more often than not to make right decisions, to be able to have discernment, to have a level of wisdom and apply it to whatever situation that you may be in. Verse 14, for a man's mind is sometime wont to tell him more than 7 watchmen that sit above in a high tower. I used to think that was a negative thing and what scripture was reading. That's not what the scripture is saying. This is a right thing. This is a thing that's pointing out good to you. Your mind's supposed to be in a position where it's as if you're taking in information from 7 different people and they're letting you know from all points of the castle, this is happening over here, this is happening over here, this is happening behind you. A person's supposed to be understanding that, take that information in, like Proverbs 20 and 5. The counsel of a man's mind is deep like a well. He's supposed to be able to take some of that out and make it applicable to whatever situation he's in. That's how your mind's supposed to function. It's not supposed to be run down. It's not supposed to be looking on negative things all the time and messing your thought process up to where you're reacting based on the things around you instead of having reaction of what the Most High is giving you. This is true. The commandments is true. Set your heart, your mindset, and your faith on that, and not the outside world, which consistently changes, right? These news outlets do these things all the time, where they can script a narrative and they hand it out, and go push this, go teach this, and then just drain people all day. I'm not saying that some of that stuff ain't true, but a person still needs to filter that through the scriptures. The Most High is the one that's keeping the time, not everybody else. Here's a precept for you: Proverbs 26:16. This is the reason why I was saying before. I used to think this Sirach 37 was a wrong one. When I say Proverbs 26 and 16. Yeah. It says, the sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason, right? So a person, like Proverbs 26 talks about a person that's, you have these two positions of arguing with a person that's wise in his own conceit. You battle him to help him to knock the BS off his mindset and his ideology to help to save him. But you do reach a point where you're talking to an individual and they're just too far gone. Like Proverbs 18 talks about a person that only talking to discover their own heart, right? They're only talking, they just like to talk. It's not necessarily somebody that's trying to get to a point or is able to be pliable in whatever you say. He can adjust. He's just a prideful individual. So let's go to Ecclesiastes 10. Ecclesiastes 10 and 10. It says, if the iron be blunt, and he do not whet the edge, then must he put to more strength. But wisdom is profitable to direct, right? If the tool that you're using is become dull, right? The Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpeneth iron, right? You're supposed to be able to have these things from other brothers or sisters, whatever group you may be in. But if an iron is blunt and you don't whet the edge, meaning you don't consistently sharpen it, you don't consistently look at it, you don't consistently do what you need to do to make this tool workable at its highest efficiency, then you're going to have to put more and more effort into something that you could just do this thing once or once in a while instead of having to make things harder for yourself, right? The same way when you have the phone, right? You got the computer, you got certain circles you talk to or you hang out with. Certain people can make things more difficult for you, and you can make things more difficult for yourself while you spend time around them, right? Things can be easier or your mind can be clearer if you put yourself in an environment that facilitates that. But if you are consistently over consuming this, putting yourself in wild predicaments, then you're going to eventually make things harder for yourself. You just have to have reasoning and wisdom to be able to move around and be like, I'm going to take the more efficient path. I'm not going to make things harder for myself because it's already difficult anyway, especially the place that we live in. Make things easier for yourself. Wisdom is supposed to be there to be profitable. It's supposed to direct you. It's supposed to you understand and take the scripture off the page in a conversation or a person you run into, or somebody sends you a plate out of a restaurant, you got a pork on it, or you're supposed to not make things more difficult and more complicated than they are because you have enough of that in the world on a day-to-day basis. Don't put yourself in these positions to where you're more stressed out than a person needs to be. Focus on the Most High, focus on the truth, focus on the scriptures, read, pour things into yourself that's supposed to be beneficial. If you overconsume the things that's not supposed to be there, you can open yourself up to a position where you fall from and you can't get back. That's the last thing you want, right? So a person has to be mindful of these daily steps that he takes, the people he's around, the certain amount of time he's spending on something else versus how much time he's spending on righteousness, wickedness, whatever it may be. A person needs to be mindful of that to make things as easy as possible because, again, this world is more difficult than people in the truth understand it. Especially if you're trying to walk righteous, it's different from a person that, like, Christians say these things where it's like they're killing Christians in Uganda or whatever, and it's like you watch them and you see their demeanor and how they move. And Israelites, just that set aside, the concept of somebody believing in Christ and living nothing like it, that's not a hard task, right? It's just somebody saying something with a tag and not having to fulfill none of the things that he says that he's lived on. This banner, it's just something over your head. It's not truly there to be a something that changes the individual that they claim that they're under, right? It's just words. It doesn't really mean anything. Um, 1 Corinthians 10. First Corinthians 10 and verse 12, it says, wherefore, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall, right? We're back to the Luke 10 thing. When the Most High, remember, he's hand picking publicans, sinners to go do the work. These people are supposed to convert over, right? The word is going to change them. The law makes you perfect, right? Psalms 19. It's supposed to change you and put the work into you to make you a better individual. That's God's ability. That's his words. I have the ability to do that. But even in that position, I don't care how many years it's been. I don't care what you've seen over the years, how many classes you've taught, how many people you've talked to, how many times you've been to camp. It doesn't matter. Remember that you're still a patient in the hospital. Always remember that. Because a person needs to understand taking heed before you fall is just another way of saying, I'm never safe, right? that's the mindset you have to have in the truth. I'm never safe. I might feel that way, but even you feeling that, and maybe that thought like forming in your mind, that should be a pause to you to be like, dang, let me brush up on something. Let me get stronger in this, right? Constantly rolling. That's how the Most High's, that's how Christ's mindset was. Why he never fascinated to me. Never even had. Forget the fact that he didn't sin. I mean, that's a gargantuan achievement anyway. But the fact that you didn't see him like flip out in an instance, you didn't see him like lose his composure in situations, right? The closest you got is the Garden of Gethsemane, but it's not even really, because he even said it's not even a good example. It's the worst. It's the only thing that you do have is not my will but yours. It's not like he had no slips. That's not to say that we're not going to have any, but it's going to be more beneficial and less likely that you have slips if your mind is constantly rolling and looking for improvement, right? To not be settled in a position and feeling comfortable where you're at, because anything can happen, right? Any situation can happen. 8 days from now can be completely different. 6 months, whatever it may be. Obviously, pushing time out. Somebody say 10 years can look different. But remember, your life can change in 24 hours. So this is something a person has to be mindful of, right? We'll end here. Ecclesiastes, back to Ecclesiastes 6. Ecclesiastes 6 and verse 9. It says, better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the desire. This is also vanity and vexation of the spirit. Be mindful of the things that you do have that are valuable, right? We often naturally, like the Sirach 31, right? And it's funny because like the Lord, outside of doing research, most people's natural inclination is not to fast, right? Deprive yourself of food or water. It's not a natural thing to do. It's like some people, I've been in that situation. I'm not talking about some people, including myself, don't fast nowhere even near as much as they should, right? That's something I need to change. But I say that because of the fact of we might not be mindful of it until atonement comes around, or somebody is calling for a fast, to help something or an individual. But it's rare that we do that, right? Not speaking for everybody, but for me or for some individuals that, might fit in that box. It's not a natural thing. A natural thing is to eat, overeat, right? The same thing with the Ciroc 1, but an insatiable man is not a good thing because side effects come. Bad things happen. Solomon says, better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the desire. It's good to be aware of the things that are important and the things that really carry weight in your life that you thank the Most High for. Getting up, which it is sometimes it's hard to kind of, because it's an everyday occurrence. To get up, to be able to breathe well, to have health, to whatever it may be. Things that we overlook oftentimes because our eyes are always looking past the things that the Most High has given us to look for something else. What don't I have? I'm guilty of it all the time. But it is something that we need to be mindful of consistently because there's so many things that the Most High has given you that you're not putting emphasis on. But if He takes it away, your eyes being far off will start to zoom back in and close and being like, now these things are actually really important to me. You start to understand the level of it missing, right? And you don't want to be in that position. You want to kind of cherish and honor it while you have it. It's better. It's like the two in the hand is worth one in the hand is worth two in the bush. Two in the hand is worth one in the bush. I always mess that phrasing up. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I think that's it. But appreciate the things that you do have and not to be a person that's always looking for something else, right? Because again, that perception can get you, especially when you're looking at people that have it all, which seem to be the sinners on the earth. I hope that helps. Like I said, we won't be that long. I hope everybody has a happy Sabbath. Continue to pray for brothers and sisters, man. There's stuff coming down the pipe, man. It ain't looking good. But preparation and stuff that people need to keep in mind about. The Most High is the one that's looking after everybody. So you gotta have. It's like the Most High is never not going to do His job. So you got to make sure that you're doing yours consistently and are good at it. This is a very strange time, and it's not like we've seen it in our lifetime. A kingdom falling, and that's what's happening. And in order for a kingdom to fall, citizens are going to be affected because they're inside the kingdom. But this is the time to have the Most High on your side because as we walk into very unsure times, it's difficult. And it's best to be able to have the one that is controlling all things in your corner versus not. So do some self-evaluation. Do some, be aware of the things. Take heed lest you fall. And be aware of the things that you need to improve on. Things that you need to exit out of your life. Just being mindful of it, right? It's a lot, and it's always an everyday process. So don't give up. Continue to have faith. Continue to pray. Ask the Most High to help. And Lord's will next week, y'all. Happy Sabbath. I hope everybody's well. Keep praying for each other, y'all. Shalom.